I don't think I'm going to talk much, or I might talk much here in a little bit. I don't know. I'm high and drunk and
Don't mind
horny
me.
and bored. And, no, I'm just kidding. But on a real note, I was trying to find a specific video. If anyone that either sees this like now or sees this at a later time, the video I'm looking for, some of you all might be familiar with Max Egan, you know. Well, anyway, Max had an experience this summer. Perth Observer, she was the first one that had sent me a link to his video at that time, detailing the experience that he had over the course of this summer. It involved some, I don't want to say he was abducted. I don't want to say that was the topic of the video, but it was an experience similar to something of that nature. Well, anyway, as many of you know, Max's channel was recently pulled from YouTube, and he's been getting some flack from some of the other networks. I'm having a difficulty finding that specific video. Anyway, on that note, I am going to sit here and hang out, get some shit done. I hope everyone's doing great. Much love, everyone. Hope everybody's taking care of each other and doing all that good shit. Do as I say, not as I do. And here we go. Let's listen to Max Egan.
Fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? And your playing small does not serve the world. There is nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We're all meant to shrink. Essentially, people's minds are infected by certain things that can really only be viewed as pathogens, psychological pathogens. And these things are mainly the economic system, which is an economic pathogen, the social system, the hierarchical social system, which also infects people's minds like a pathogen, and of course the very obvious religious pathogen that infects people's minds. And these three mechanisms or pathogens very much affect people's ability to be themselves, to be all that they can be, and very much paint people into a corner and prevent them from ever wanting to stand in their own power or let their light shine. The social pathogen is actually a very, very effective mechanism, because the social pathogen helps to control people in as much as they tend to police themselves. They police their own thoughts and police their own actions because they are very, very concerned about peer group pressure. Creating some item and you're convincing people that they want this thing when really they don't. It's nothing that they actually need, because there's nothing about this society that we do actually need. I mean, not as far as what we make and use on a daily basis, folks. I mean, why do we need plastic furniture? Why do we need all of the prefab stuff that we've got? Why do we need all these building materials and all the things that we make? It's only because we make things to break. We make everything to be temporary because we do it to support capitalism and to support the economic model. And that's what it's all about. I mean, sure, there are some things that we need as a society. I mean, that goes without question. If we're going to have a society, there are some certain things that we need. I mean, things like electricity, things like the internet. But I mean, even with things like electricity and the internet, I mean, sure, these sorts of things are very handy, but we don't actually need them for survival. But even though, okay, you might say, well, yes, we do. Well, okay, if we do, that's fine, but we could do them and provide all of these things for humanity in a way that didn't put people in scarcity. I mean, if we were all working together as one species and working for a way to improve the human condition, we would provide all of the services that we've got for free, because this is what humanity needs to have a society like this. And of course, all of this is much more easy to perpetuate and much more easy to convince the people that it's real via the mechanism of the religious pathogen, because the religious pathogen will always teach people to expect things to get worse and to love their enemies and to not really worry about it, because once you're all dispossessed and everything seems like it's lost, you will have a supernatural Saviour appear from the heavens and perform superhuman actions to miraculously save everybody. And all the evil tyrants will be taken away to hell, and suddenly we will all ascend to heaven. So, of course, the religious pathogen is what creates and perpetuates the continual degradation that mankind is subject to. And it does so in a manner that most people can accept. And not only do they accept it, but what is most interesting to me is that in many ways they welcome this suffering, because that's also what the religious pathogen instills into people's minds, is the concept that suffering is good, that suffering brings redemption. The meek shall inherit the earth. Love those who oppress you. Do not fight against your enemies. Allow yourself to suffer, because suffering is noble and suffering brings about redemption. Actually, for anybody who is interested in a very good breakdown of what the Christian religion actually is and what the whole salvationist redeemer concept is really all about, I would recommend reading a book by John Lamb Lash called Not in His Image. It's actually a very, very good critique of Christianity taken from a Gnostic perspective. In the West, where we are affected by mental pathogens that keep us locked into a system of servitude that we feel comfortable and secure in, we don't really want things to change. We can complain about things a lot. I mean, a lot of the people out there in the truth community who complain about the system and they want to bring the system down, and yet they depend on the system. They go and use the supermarkets. They do all the stuff that everybody does. They just complain about it. And if the system was to really be brought down and the battle was really to be won, these people would not know what to do with themselves. So what is the real answer? Well, the real answer is to see what the mechanism is, I believe. That's the real answer. You see how the mechanism works. Look at the right information and gather the right information and keep an open mind. Don't get locked into a belief system. Just keep an open mind and look at everybody's research. Look at all the research that's out there, and then take a step back and look at the world that exists around you. Look at what you are swimming in, and you begin to see what's really going on here. Have a look at native cultures. If you can, go to South America or go somewhere where there is a native culture and look at how these people live. Look at how happy and content and wonderful these people are. Go spend some time with the Shipibo people in the Amazon jungle. Amazing people that are very, very happy and very contented, and that have this real connection to the earth. The true path of mankind is a path that acts in harmony with the planet that we inhabit and with all life on the planet, acts in respect for each other, and works to nurture the human creative spirit, the creative spirit of mankind, because we are capable of so much. Everybody has that spark of creativity and that urge to do something wonderful within them. It's in everybody, but it's been taken away from us by this left brain civilization. So something's happened to skew us from our path. This is what some people call a schism. David Icke calls it the schism. Well, whatever it is, there is something that happened that skewed us from that path. And that's why the shaman are coming out now, the shaman that are left, and coming out and attempting to do ceremony with as many people as they can around the planet now to introduce them to the knowledge of the plants, because they feel it's the only way to give people a crash course in reality, to get them back to that connection with spirit. And they feel that people need to do this because it's our loss of connection to spirit which has actually skewed us from our path. And if we don't get this connection to spirit back again, then we're going to take the shaman with us. We're going to take everything with us. We're going to take the whole world down with us into this machine-like society that we seem to be creating. And that is a great concern, ladies and gentlemen. And that's why it's so important to become aware of these pathogens. It's so important to let go of whatever's happened in the past. And it's so important to focus on steps we can take to create a viable future. What people are attempting to do, I think, the truth community anyway, the alternative research community, is they're attempting to clear the brain fog. to a large extent. I mean, of course, there are a lot of people in the truth community, as I've said, they're turning it into an industry, it's become a revenue stream, and a lot of people are programmed into the fight, but not programmed into the solution. But there are still very, very good researchers within the alternate research community that present very, very valuable information in an attempt to clear the general brain fog that humanity is suffering at the moment. And I think it's great that we do this, because as people wake up to the fact that they are living in a paper-based matrix, it's good for them to have valuable and empowering information to find. It's good to have that there ready for them to find, because when people wake up to how the world works, it can be a huge shock for them. And unless we can remove ourselves from the pathological nature of this society and re-establish our connection with the old ways and re-establish our connection with the earth and with ourselves, well, there'll be no way out of the situation. And this can only come about through respect. That's the thing, folks. It can only come about through respect and forgiveness. That's the most important thing. And again, I'm asking you to forgive psychopathic entities who may be in charge of certain countries, because they won't allow you to. They will always act in a psychopathic manner. That's what they do. And even if we were to disentangle ourselves from this corporate system that currently enslaves us, these people will still be there attempting to push it onto you and attempting to control your life in some way, because that's what psychopaths do. But if we live in a community that respects itself and respects each other, then we will have the strength of community to stand up against any tyrant, because that's what community can do. But it has to come from respect. It's got to be based in respect. And it's not a respect that people really need to earn. Everyone deserves respect. They shouldn't have to earn respect. They deserve respect. The only reason they have to earn respect at the moment is because it's very hard to know who to respect within the parameters of this society, because this society creates an incredibly uneven playing field whereby people have to always run around trying to exploit each other in order to collect enough paper in order to pay to be alive. Nobody can turn you into a slave unless you allow them. Nobody can make you afraid of anything unless you allow them. Nobody can tell you to do something wrong unless you allow them. God never created you to be a slave. Man did. God never created division or set up any borders between brothers. Man did. God never told you to hurt or kill one another. Man did. So why is man your God and not the Creator? It seems that many people are completely unaware of how they are being controlled energetically and how their thoughts and mental processes are being controlled. How many of the thoughts they are having are very simply not their own. And very often we are manipulating ourselves. It's extremely important that people see the mind control and how they are manipulated energetically. The energetic manipulation that we are subject to is extremely subtle, and most people don't even realize that many of the thoughts they are having are not their own, and they don't realize how they are being manipulated into acting out certain scenarios. As a species, we seem deathly afraid of ever seeing anybody apart from themselves ever excel at anything. People in modern society are deathly afraid of seeing anybody perhaps enjoying their lives a little bit too much, or doing better than what we believe they should be doing, or doing any better than they are. Well, I suppose we're okay with people doing well as long as we are doing a little bit better. And it's a very clever but very insidious undertone that's been interjected into our way of thinking, and most certainly interjected into the independent media. You know, we've got a situation where most of humanity is energy deprived because, you know, you get humanity and you squash it into a box and you fracture it and you prevent it from ever discovering itself or even being who and what it is. You know, people are just never able to truly express themselves or even know themselves. And you end up with a situation where people are completely disconnected from source, and their most readily available source of energy is other people. And so the easiest way for them to get energy from other people, of course, is to hack down everybody they see around them who may be excelling. And this, of course, prevents humankind from ever moving forward, because anybody who has a good idea or really wants to make some change is immediately hacked down and told that he has to be part of the general throng, because there are no tall poppies, there are nobody that excels, there is nobody who's better. So all of these things are taken to an extreme, folks. I mean, sure, we're all equal. There's nobody who has more value than anybody else. But people have creative ideas, and these ideas should be put into practice, and people should be allowed to have these ideas. And tall poppy syndrome prevents this from ever happening. It prevents real lights from ever truly being able to shine. But that's what happens, folks. You take everything you can from human consciousness and you squash it into a little box. And in that situation, people kind of enjoy hacking down everybody around them, because it's a really readily available source of energy for them. And that's just the way it is. And that's the way our society has become. And it's kind of disturbing, but it's just a part of our society. It's a part of our mental makeup now. And of course, I'm speaking generally, folks. It may not be part of your mental makeup, but as a species, it is part of our general social makeup, and very noticeably so. And as I said, this happens because unfortunately most people are so disconnected from source now that they are simply not able to get energy, and so their most readily available source of energy is other people. But we're at a very pivotal time at the moment. We're at a very pivotal emotional time, and that's very obvious by what's been happening in the last few months, in the last year. I mean, everybody's been going through it. I've certainly been going through it. I mean, there's been major changes in my life and in my relationships with people, and I know a lot of people that have been going through the same thing. There's been a lot of changes in their lives and in their relationships with people. People that I know that never get depressed have been going through all sorts of emotional extremes, and we're at a time now where we really need to regain some focus and to find some balance. We've got to be tough and strong and hard as nails and resilient on one hand, but then we've got to be kind and loving and open on the other hand. So we need to find the balance between those two, and what we really need to do is connect back with our hearts and really look for the heart in all of our actions. And be prepared to face trials and tribulations, but be prepared to stand strong and stand true and stand fast in your truth, but always be open and always be kind and always be gentle and honest in your approach. If you can do that, I think you're going to find a way through this period. If you can make sure you're always centered in your heart and your actions, I think you're going to find that you are going to be able to avoid the trap of slipping into that energy harvest where you're just harvesting energy from other people. You are a living expression of universal consciousness, a living expression of universal creation, here to have the experience. You're gifted the vessel that you inhabit to have the experience in by your Creator God, whatever you perceive that to be. And you are gifted this vessel to do with what you will and to make of the experience what you can. And there is nobody who has a right of ownership or authority over that vessel apart from you. And there is nobody who you should be allowing to claim they have a right to rule you, or have a right to own you, or have a right to control you, or have any right of authority over you, because they don't. The only ones who have any authority over the vessel that you inhabit is yourself and the Creator who gifted you the vessel for your temporary use. And that's the thing, folks. We've forgotten that we're people. We've forgotten that we are man. We have forgotten that God created man and gave man dominion over the earth, and we are man. And everything below that is a creation of man. We have a Creator, whatever that is. Whatever you perceive it to be, even if you're agnostic, there's somewhere that you come from. And whatever that is, well, that's your Creator. So it's just the way you can look at it, folks. But it's helpful in remembering who and what you are, remembering that you are here for the experience, folks. Nobody owns you. Nobody has a right of ownership over you. And the only reason you believe that people do have a right of ownership or any right of authority over you at all is because you've been tricked into thinking that way. And it's imperative that we break out of this programming. Just knowing who and what you are, that is the most empowering information that you can have. And when you know how to stand in that, You know, as soon as you realize that you are a living vessel here for the experience and that no one has authority over you and that you are man, God created man and gave you dominion over the earth, just knowing that one simple fact is power. As soon as you remember that, that is power. Just standing in that one simple fact and asking the right questions is power. That is truly all the power that you need. It's just that most people don't know how to exercise that power because they don't really have the confidence in themselves to do so, and they don't generally understand the language that they're speaking. And the way you can put this into some sort of perspective is to truly understand what your body is made of. I mean, your body is 85% water, in fact more in some cases, but most people are around 85% water, and water has memory. And what are you? You were created, you are a product of the combined waters of your parents, and they are a product of the combined waters of all of their ancestors all the way down the line. And water has memory. That's the thing. The waters that created you, the combined waters of your parents, contain all the memory of all the experiences that your parents went through. All the emotion, all the emotional blockages, everything they experienced, everything they saw, everything they know is encoded in the water in their bodies. And it's the same for every ancestor all the way down the line. And you are a product of the combination of all of those waters, all of which contains all the memory of all of the experiences of those who came before, who created those combined waters that created you. If you look at the work of people such as Masamu Emoto, if you look at a film called Water, the Great Mystery, which goes through water clusters and shows how they're formed and confirms that water has memory and that it's stored through clusters. If you look at the work of people such as Victor Schauberger, who did some absolutely incredible work way back in the 1930s and 1940s or even before, Victor Schauberger actually showed and proved that water is a living conscious substance and that it also actually gives birth to itself. He performed experiments where he witnessed pools spontaneously giving birth to water, instances where pools suddenly gained a third of their size and all sorts of stuff. Like truly, really amazing work. And I would highly recommend, if anybody wants to understand water, that they look into the work of Victor Schauberger. But anyway, what we find when we look into all of this work is that water contains memory and that it's stored in water clusters. Water is quite literally the RAM drive of this earth, and it contains all the memory of everything that came before. You are a result of the combined waters of all your ancestral chain, and some of the blockages that you may be experiencing may well be ancestral blockages. Like, for example, if you've got a particular fear of spiders, for example, perhaps one of your ancestors had a nasty encounter with a spider. If you've got a fear of horses, perhaps the same sort of thing happened. There was a woman who had severe stomach pains all her life, and she found out that one of her ancestors had actually been stabbed in the stomach. And once she came to terms with that, she was able to heal that blockage. So all these things show that water has memory, and so it's very important to understand what your body is. Never say you can't do something, or that something seems impossible, or that something can't be done, no matter how discouraging or harrowing it may be. Human beings are limited only by what we allow ourselves to be limited by, our own minds. We are each the masters of our own reality. When we become self-aware to this, absolutely anything in the world is possible. Master yourself, become the king of the world around you. Let no odds, chastisement, exile, doubt, fear, or any mental virus prevent you from accomplishing your dreams. Never be a victim of life. Mike Norton. The thing is that we are all victims of this society. Essentially, we are. Our education system, the way we're kept permanently in debt, everything that this system does to curtail human potential is there. One of the most uncomfortable issues for them to face. The reality is that There's a great many people who go through this existence living their life as a victim. And if you look a little deeper, what you find is that in such cases, people are generally victims of themselves during their own lives. I mean, sure, we tend to judge other people through our lives because we're programmed to do it, but we very often don't notice just how much we are judging ourselves along the way. But you get to a point in life where you think, why does everything go wrong? It's a kind of a love-hate relationship that you develop with yourself during the youthful part of your life. Very often people develop this type of relationship with themselves unless they can go and immerse themselves in some business or some company or some career or apprenticeship or whatever to gain that sort of focus and have that goal to achieve. Many people who go through school and think that all of this stuff's meaningless and it's really all about living the life generally get to a point halfway through their life or through their youth where they really wonder what it's about and wonder if they're simply a misfit and perhaps they should have gone and got that career that all their friends were getting in high school. Of course, many people don't pursue these careers because it just seems so wrong to them. It seems so unnatural. It feels to them that they are stepping so far off their path and they wonder why they should ever have to do such a thing. And so they go and step onto their path in life and they find some way of making it through. But then they find themselves struggling an inordinate amount compared to what their friends are, and they wonder if they made the right choice. This is sort of the situation that I was in when I was a teenager. I was working as a musician, but I was also wondering why I couldn't be like other people. And this is very often the case for most of the youth and even people early in adulthood. They go through a certain crisis point where they really wonder if they are on the right path. And if you really step back and look at this, what you begin to realize is that all of this is due to programming. You know, when I was young, the invention of the television really changed life in my house. It really did. And when I look back on it and I see what television did to influence myself, to influence my family, and to influence people around us, it really is quite remarkable. You know, all of the social visions that I had of what society could be, all of these come from the television, and generally this will be the same for most people out there. Most of the standards that you set for yourself come from the images that are portrayed to you on television. You know, television portrays a very, very different world to the real world. You know, even when you're looking at a city on television, it just looks different on film. You know, you see a place on screen and they get it from the right camera angle and they get the people with the right lighting on them, and things look larger than life. They look too real to be real, and you find yourself immersed in situations more than you would be immersed in real life situations. And again, this is done usually from the lighting and the camera angles, and there's all sorts of subliminal programming that goes into the way they set these scenes up in the movies. And you'll find that just watching a movie that you don't even think has any programming in it, just watching some comedy show on TV, if you can really look at the subtext of the show, the comedy show or the movie or whatever it is you're watching, look at how the scenery is set up. Notice what's on the desks, notice the furniture in the room, notice the decorations in the rooms that they use, notice the clothes people are wearing, notice the body language when they interact with each other, and notice the underlying themes of the conversation, how they are influencing your thoughts and your opinions. The mainstream media has brought this to a fine art. For example, you notice when you watch the news, there's always two anchor people there, and when they have a story that is particularly interesting, at the end of the story they'll have a little conversation with each other, a couple of quick quips. Someone may comment on, gee, what a terrible story that was, and how people must feel whatever about it, and the other anchor person will nod their agreement and have their little quip, and that will instill that mindset into the minds of the viewer and assure the viewer that this is the way they should also be thinking about this if they are to be perceived as an intelligent person. Because of course the newsreaders are very intelligent. I mean, look at them, the way they dress, and they sit there all prim and proper with their very nice news voices. And apart from the story that they have just given you, they've also given you their impression, and they present this vision of what society is and how you should think about what they just told you. And all of these things are designed to influence our view of the society around us, and essentially our view of ourselves. And this filters down to influencing how we judge ourselves and how we judge the people around us and the people we come into contact with. I mean, just look at the fashion that the young kids wear around today. There's always this need to fit into a certain group or fit into a certain scene or to make some type of individual statement. You know, people often believe they are the way they dress. That is who they are. This is my package. This is how I present myself. This is who I am. And very often they miss out on themselves along the way because they're attempting to be something that they're not. They think that they have to be something. They have to be this image of themselves that they have in their mind before they will be deemed successful according to their own standards. It's a weird kind of a programming that we put ourselves through, but what we do very often through all of this is we miss out on our lives. We miss out on the development of our true selves. And that is why we judge ourselves poorly, because we never reach these standards that we set for ourselves. We have this vision which is unobtainable, which comes from the television anyway. It's not who we are. And really, if we were just comfortable with who we are and we focused more on being that, we would find that we would probably be quite successful in our lives, because really, being who we are is what we came here to do, not all the other stuff. That's just a distraction, and that's why it's there. And many of these goals that we aspire to really don't mean anything anyway. We have all these visions of where we should be, but once we get there, we realize that it's really just the same as where we were. Now that we've got the golden egg, there's nothing really there, so we may as well have looked at ourselves for the journey anyway, and may as well have stayed on our own path. And that's what many people are afraid of doing when they're young, is staying on their own path and being true to who and what they are. You know, people judge themselves poorly because they have these visions of where they should be, but it's always according to someone else's parameters. So if you're in a situation in your life where you're having these doubts about yourself and about what you should be doing, about who you are, perhaps you just need to really look inside yourself and examine what you really want to do. Because what you want to do is what you should be doing. And you may think that there are all sorts of barriers in the way of what you want to do, but ask yourself, how many of these barriers are you putting there yourself? Because very often, if you look a little deeper, you'll find that many of them don't exist. These are just fears that you have of stepping outside of your comfort zone. And don't feel bad about it. I mean, we all have these fears and reservations, but sometimes we just let them control our lives and overwhelm us. And again, this is because people have a stake in the outcome. People have a stake in the outcome because they have this vision of what the future should look like. You know, people who want to go on a holiday, they want to leave the country and go and do something, they believe that if they work really hard, they'll be able to do this. And they get themselves in a position where, okay, they find a good job that gets a good wage, and so they move into a unit nearby the job, and then they've got to pay rent, and then of course they've got to get to work, so they buy a car or purchase a vehicle of some kind so they can get to work, and then they find that they have to put fuel in the vehicle in order to get to work. So they find that they bought the vehicle so that they can get to work, and the work that they're doing is basically paying for the running costs of the vehicle and the running costs of the unit that they rented. So the whole thing cancels itself out by default, and they are left with a small amount left over with which to feed themselves, and then they're able to put away a pittance every week in the hope that they may save up and hopefully do what they want to do. But all of that energy they're putting into this event is really just perpetuating the cycle, because everything is supporting everything else. The unit and the vehicle you acquire in order to be able to perform the work, but everything that you gain during the work only supports the running costs of the vehicle and the unit. If there's somewhere you want to go and something you want to do, I suggest you just go and do it and see what happens. But find yourself if you get outside of your comfort zone. Reality is much more complex than any judgment of right or wrong encourages you to believe. When you really understand the ethical, spiritual, social, economic, and psychological forces that shape individuals, you will see that people's choices are not based on a desire to hurt. Instead, they are in accord with what they know and what worldviews are available to them. Most are doing the best they can, given what information they've received and what problems they are facing. Everything that exists, everything within all creation, manifests through the harmonic vibration of light and sound. Everything that exists is light and sound. Everything that exists is, at its most basic form, simply pure energy. And energy is the stuff that drives the universe itself. All things are created from this energy. If you really get down to it and look at reality on a quantum level, it's all about different vibrational frequencies of light and sound. Everything. And it's all connected because all is energy. What we experience in the reality that we live in is that everything is connected by energy, and the energy permeates everything, much like the water permeates everything that exists within the ocean. You see, we're actually swimming in an ocean too, folks. It's an ocean of energy. We are quite literally moving through an ocean made of energy that permeates absolutely everything. And this is why everything is connected. This is why everything is one. Everything comes from a single source. And this is how we are connected, and it's how we are also completely separate. Now, when you really begin to get a grasp on this and you really begin to figure out what's going on here, and you realize that the body is simply a biological computer that's downloading a specific frequency that you experience as yourself, you really begin to question why human consciousness is in such a disunited state. You begin to see how easy it would actually be to change reality. And you have to also begin to question how we got into this disunited state. We only have 3% of our DNA active. We're only experiencing a very, very small bandwidth of reality, and that most of our body's shut down. Our pineal gland is completely inoperative. When you really look at the entire human organism from an energetic perspective, it is something that is virtually inoperative. The higher senses are simply not functioning. The connection and the ability to be able to read and decode the energy field around us is virtually non-existent. And because of this, we are literally experiencing about 3% of reality. If you had a car and it was operating to 3% of its capability, if you had a computer that was functioning on 3% of its processor power, able to access 3% of the internet and use 3% of its graphics, in both cases you would consider your machinery to be inoperative. And yet what we have is human consciousness driving a vehicle that is in exactly this same inoperative state. But we don't realize it's happening because we don't look at reality from the correct perspective. What I'm attempting to convey here is the concept of the energetic universe, an energetic universe that functions entirely upon electrical stimuli. And it's the space itself that is real. It's the space that contains all of this energy. What we perceive to be blank, empty space, it's not empty at all. It's full of energy. And this energy is the real stuff of the universe. And all matter is simply divisions in space. It's sections of energy that have coalesced to form matter based on perception. This information is known very well by many indigenous tribes, and this is why the elite went to such an extraordinary effort in order to wipe out these indigenous tribes, because they wished to hide this information. And indeed, most of what's been done to suppress these indigenous cultures, and most of what's been done within modern society through the application of our left brain education and our religious institutions, has been to suppress this knowledge, to suppress this understanding of reality from people, because it's a very empowering understanding. And having this understanding helps people to think outside of the box. And thinking outside of the box is what will essentially free people from the matrix that they believe to be real. The thing is, what you find is that most indigenous cultures still think with their whole brain. They still view reality from both a left and a right brain perspective. Whereas most westernized people, people that exist within modern society, due to walking on flat ground and due to having square corners everywhere and this completely unnatural environment that they live in, and through the constant sensory bombardment that the left brain gets, people are not even aware that they're only using half their brain. They're not even aware that a right brain perspective of reality even exists. But a right brain perspective of reality is what helps you read the energy around you. It's what helps you understand the workings of the universe and the workings of reality. And it's what frees you from the matrix. An interesting experiment you can try is to, rather than focus always upon the matter that exists around you and the objects that exist around you, try to pay some attention to the space between the objects that is created by the presence of the object. We perceive it to be irrelevant to devote any attention to the spaces between objects. All we see are the objects, and so we create a world that is full of these objects, but we don't experience the real world because of it. We don't experience the energetic stuff that creates all of these objects. We only experience the objects themselves, simply due to the perception that we have and the perspective that we look at things from. And this is a perspective that we've been trained to look at things from through our left brain education system. And our religious systems are very, very good at preventing people from ever making these connections and looking within themselves, because our religious institutions are all designed to cause people to put their attention and their expectation upon something which is external to themselves, rather than ever looking for salvation from within. And there's a big clue in that. There's a big clue as to why such an extraordinary amount of effort and such meticulous attention has been devoted to detail in order to prevent mankind from ever gaining this understanding and from ever looking within themselves. Because it is within each of us that the answers to all of the problems we face ultimately lie. When you really begin gaining a clear understanding of the fact that it is an energetic universe and that everything that happens in the universe happens electromagnetically, you begin to see a little bit of why the human dilemma exists. You see, essentially what has happened is, because we have been cut off from our higher senses and we are unable to read the energy field around us, and we all need energy to survive, we tend to extract that energy from each other. We set up systems and business systems and social systems and relationship systems whereby we are able to harvest energy from other people. We put ourselves in a position where we have a constant flow of energy from those around us. Sometimes this can be quite beneficial and quite harmonious, and things can work out quite well, but it's never truly where we should be. And very often, it simply creates animosity and division. People tend to have stuff with other people. Many people may wish to hurt those who have wronged them or profit from people around them, and these sorts of things. And this is all energy harvesting. And they do this because they're disconnected from source. They simply don't know how to tap into the energy field that's all around us. And so they have to extract it from a more readily available source, which is another person. And that's basically what we do. And the reason this has become so prominent in modern society is because our societies themselves are fear-based. It's simply a system of fear-based mind control. I mean, that's all it really is, folks. Our education system is fear-based. Our social structure is fear-based. Our corporate and business world is all fear-based. It's all centered around a fear of shortage and the concept that the meaning of life is the one with the most stuff wins. And it's all fear-based. It's all fear-based and ego-based. The way to fix all of the problems that we face in the world is to remove fear from your consciousness. And I believe that something that is very beneficial and very helpful in removing that fear is to understand what reality is and how reality works. Because I've found that by incorporating a right brain understanding into your perception of reality, you can literally change reality. You can change your personal reality anyway. I mean, I've attracted so many different things into my life, and I've attracted so many different events and different people into my life simply through following the synchronicity in my life that becomes more apparent the more I open up my right brain. And you find that reality wants to interact with you, but you only want to interact with reality. And to try to put that a little bit clearer, it's like we feel that our input is all that matters. We don't consider the input of reality itself. And what you find is that you're actually part of this ongoing dialogue between you and reality. It's like a conversation that's going on between yourself and the universe, but you're not listening. The universe is attempting to speak to you, but you're not listening. It's like you're having a conversation with someone, but you're wearing earplugs and you can't hear what's being said to you, and you're the one who's doing all the talking. That's kind of the way we interact with reality. We talk to each other, we might talk to our animals, but we don't talk to the energy field around us. Well, we do talk to it, but we don't listen to what it says back to us. This is actually a language that you're speaking because you've forgotten what the language is, and you don't have the higher senses active that are required to perceive this language and comprehend this language. And you see, one of the biggest obstacles to you ever accessing these higher senses and ever understanding this language is fear. It's the vibration that fear sets up within your body, within your system, within your whole energy field. And this is why our entire society and everything about it is all based on fear. As I said, it's fear-based mind control. They control your mind so that you don't perceive anything outside of a left brain reality. You don't perceive anything outside of the 5 sense perception that you have of reality. And the reason I attempt to explain the way reality functions and look at things electromagnetically and attempt to help people understand the electrical nature of the universe is because I believe that when you have this understanding and you finally comprehend what reality is and how it works, then fear just falls away from you. You begin to see that there really is nothing to fear, and that the only real problem is the vibration of fear itself. That's the problem.
At the psychedelic dose level of these mushrooms, you get a very important quality. In fact, the centrally important quality for my argument, which any of you who have ever taken these things have experienced yourselves, and that's what I call boundary dissolution. And here's the notion in a nutshell. When you look back through the primate phylogeny, clear back to the primitive primates, the squirrel monkeys and those sorts of animals, there are always what are called male dominance hierarchies. There's an alpha male animal who, through brute force usually, takes the most desirable females under his command and sets his lieutenants over his male lieutenants over the rest of the females. And this is how these monkey societies order themselves. Well, because psilocybin is a boundary dissolving hallucinogen, and because the essence of ego consciousness, which is necessary for these boundary hierarchies, for these dominance hierarchies, the essence of ego is boundary definition. So what I'm actually suggesting in this book is that we self-medicated ourselves into a state of gender equality and partnership, consciously or unconsciously, by allowing this item in our diet which suppressed ego and hence suppressed male dominance hierarchies. And so the ordinary momentum of primate evolution was interrupted. And for a period of about, who knows, pick a number, somewhere between 15 and 50,000 years, ending about 10,000 years ago, we actually lived in a kind of paradise where human beings were at equilibrium and in balance with the earth, where men and women were in balance with each other. And I should have mentioned this sexual arousal, which went along with the mushroom taking, promoted a style of orgy, probably at festivals which were lunar. At the new and full moon, everybody basically just jumped each other's bones in a big heap. And the social consequence of orgy as a social style is that it makes it impossible for men to trace lines of male paternity. This is very important. There is, in a society which practices orgy, no concept for men of my children. There is only the concept of our children, meaning the tribe, the group. So male loyalty goes toward the group. And this is very important because once men discovered male paternity, they discovered ownership of hunting grounds, food supplies, women, you name it. And it tended to feed back into the formation of the ego structure. Well, and so I believe that really that was the golden age of humanity, that we all long for and have a great poignancy for, that has even been called the nostalgia for paradise. I believe we have this nostalgia for paradise because we are the victims of a fall. You see, what happened was this African grassland environment, which was necessary for the ecology of the mushrooms, and therefore necessary to maintain this partnership paradise, eventually it all dried up. The Sahara turned to desert. These people were forced out of Africa into the ancient Middle East, and we fell into history. And this is the moment at which agriculture was invented. Agriculture, because you have to stay in one place and tend the crops and defend the surplus of these successful agricultural efforts, means the end to nomadism. It means the birth of cities. It means the creation through surpluses of classes of those who have and those who have not. It promotes kingship. It creates the need for standing armies. You can tell the drift here. All the institutions that we associate with male oppression, with hierarchy, with dominance, come into play at that point. So I don't want to spend too much time on this, but just in a nutshell, that situation is the situation in which we were born and came to consciousness. The paradisical situation of gender partnership that then dissolved. It was really a return back to the earlier primate style of male dominance and hierarchy when the mushroom was no longer available. We returned to our old monkey ways.
to wake up, you're going to wake up. And if you're not ready, you're going to stay pretending that you're just a little, poor little me. And since you're all here and engaged in this sort of inquiry and listening to this sort of lecture, I assume that you're all on the process of waking up. Or else you're teasing yourselves with some kind of flirtation with waking up, which you're not serious about. But I assume maybe you are, not serious but sincere, that you are ready to wake up. So then, when you're in the way of waking up and finding out who you really are, what you do is what the whole universe is doing at the place you call here and now. You are something the whole universe is doing in the same way that a wave is something that the whole ocean is doing. The real you is not a puppet which life pushes around. The real deep down you is the whole universe. So then, when you die, you're not going to have to put up with everlasting non-existence, because that's not an experience. A lot of people are afraid that when they die, they're going to be locked up in a dark room forever. And sort of undergo that. But one of the most interesting things in the world, this is a yoga, this is a way of realization. Try and imagine what it will be like to go to sleep and never wake up. Think about that. Children think about it. It's one of the great wonders of life. What will it be like to go to sleep and never wake up? And if you think long enough about that, something will happen to you. You will find out, among other things, that it'll pose the next question to you. What was it like to wake up after having never gone to sleep? That was when you were born. You see, you can't have an experience of nothing. Nature abhors a vacuum. So after you're dead, the only thing that can happen is the same experience, or the same sort of experience as when you were born. In other words, we all know very well that after people die, other people are born. And they're all you. Only you can only experience it one at a time. Everybody is I. You all know you're you. And wheresoever beings exist throughout all galaxies, it doesn't make any difference. You are all of them. And when they come into being, that's you coming into being. You know that very well. Only you don't have to remember the past in the same way you don't have to think about how you work your thyroid gland or whatever else it is in your organism. You don't have to know how to shine the sun. You just do it. Like you breathe. Doesn't it really astonish you that you are this fantastically complex thing? And that you're doing all of this and you never had any education in how to do it?